The warbands have heard rumors that a terrible monster has come up out of its lair beneath the city following the recent devastation and established a new home in the ruins. You have heard stories of such creatures, and the treasure they accumulate is the stuff of legends. You have decided to see for yourself if the rumors are true. Today, we are going on a monster hunt. Join along as we build a terrifying nest for monsters within the City of the Damned. Scenario 7 in the Best of Town Crier is Monster Hunt. This scenario pits warbands against a monstrous beast in pursuit of epic treasure. The scenario calls out for a large ruin that is 6 inches by 6 inches, so I saw it fit to make a terrain piece that fit the part. I start my build with an offcut of MDF that is cut to our 6 inch by 6 inch dimension. With an extremely hefty amount of PVA glue down, I began laying coffee stir sticks in varying patterns to make our ruins floorboards. With water and a damp brush, I clean the excess glue from the tops of the boards. Note, doing this will cause the boards to warp from the moisture as the glue dries. This is actually a desired effect in a ruin that has no roof. Taking a sheet of chipboard, I measure out the building walls. My desired height is 2.5 inches per floor. I then measure the walls to 6 inches in length to fit the ruin dimensions. After drawing the walls, I cut them out using my kitchen shears. With the flooring mostly dried, I go back and cut all the overhangs off. Be sure to set all the scraps aside for rubble later in the build. Next, I mark and cut 2 pieces of basswood to 2.5 inches. These will serve as the building's corner trim and give it a more finished look. Using my knife, I roughly cut the squared edges down. After that, I go back to my walls and I cut them in a ruined collapsed wall manner. With my hot glue gun, I attach the walls to the base. Following that, I attach the basswood trim pieces to the outer corner. This helps hide the section where the chipboard meets. I've decided that I want the bottom level of the build to have a stone foundation. To replicate this, I'll be using cork sheets. I cut the sheets into strips of varying sizes and then cut them into individual bricks. Once we have plenty of bricks, I begin attaching them with hot glue to the structure. I attach them in a varied pattern, leaving small gaps in between each. I then clean up the sections where the cork overhangs by breaking them and using my knife. This really helps with the ruined look. I then lay stones on the inside walls of the structure. After the stone walls are complete, I carefully use a lighter to burn off any hot glue strings. To cap off our foundation walls, I break basswood in an appropriate length, hot gluing them and attaching them into place. I make sure to have a small section jut out from the structure to replicate the timber-framed architecture. Using my knife, I again rough up the lumber. Taking Vallejo texture paste, I add mud texture throughout the flooring. I focus on areas where the flooring is warped and the ground would be exposed. Using drywall compound, I make a mushy mixture and apply it between our stones to create a masonry mortar. This will create a more realistic look and will strengthen the entire build. Using the end cut of a popsicle stick, I trace out some windows for our upper floor. A mini is handy to make sure that it sits at a good height. Using my knife, I carefully cut the windows out. With tacky glue and coffee stir sticks, I frame out the upper floor. Undamaged areas will have their overhangs clipped, while areas that have the wall damaged will get snapped off. Using Sculpey air dry clay, I fill the areas between our wood framing to create stucco. smoothing it out with a little water where needed. After finishing both the interior and exterior, I create small cracks in the walls with my hobby knife. I glue the walls into place with my hot glue gun. Basswood is again used to cap off our second floor. With more Sculpey clay, I make small mounds for rubble. I add ballast over them and gently push it into place. I then throw a healthy handful of our broken cork and coffee stir sticks down for extra rubble. The entirety of it is sealed in with a PVA glue spray. After letting everything dry and priming with a spray can, we are ready to paint. I start by painting our stucco with a pale yellow, being careful to a degree but not overly stressing it. A burnt umber paint is used on all of our lumber, including most of the floor where the wood is exposed. For the areas with more rubble, I use a dark brown wash and let the paint sink into the recesses. A very light granite gray dry brush is used as an edge highlight over the entire build, focusing on areas of stone. A black wash is then used on the entire structure to tie most of the paints together and tone back our highlights. Next, I dry brush our stucco. I do this with a King's Gold yellow. This will help bring more color back to the build. Our granite gray is used again, this time overbrushed over the stone foundation to bring the edges back. Next, I add pigment powder. I made mine from cheap crushed up pastels. I have a nice rust color for a little pop, and a more traditional dirt brown. I brush these into our rubble in a sporadic manner. I place a small empty bird's nest that I found to really create the feel of a monster's nest. I thoroughly sprayed this down with an antibacterial spray to be safe, but cheap faux ones can be found online and are a perfect alternative. More spray PVA is added to seal in our pigments and strengthen the nest. And there we go, a dangerous monster's nest for the monster hunt scenario in Mordheim. I want to give a special shout out to my friend MSTerrainLab, who made the other buildings you can see in these glamour shots. A lot of my build was inspired by his style and work, so please go to his YouTube and Instagram, both linked in the description. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching. Please, if you would, take the time to like and subscribe. I'm trying to make my videos more of a regular thing on my channel, and your support means the absolute world to me right now.